Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah, for a Monday evening. How about you?
I don't believe you when you tell me it's Monday. It feels like I just had all this week in one day.
Totally understand. Totally understand. I feel like that's been my life for the last 2 weeks. I've just been like a rolling, just on the go, and then finally today I just stopped. I'm like, okay, I'm taking a day off and just getting my life back in order.
Yeah. So Terminator Dark Fate?
Yeah.
It cost $185 million to make, and it only made 29 mil domestic.
Yeah. Read that in Forbes, magazine, and 124 global. So it's a bomb. We can go ahead and declare it as such. And this was whenever our first, I think, was it San Diego Comic-Con or earlier this year when I saw the trailer for it, I was already kind of iffy. And honestly, I haven't watched a Terminator film since Terminator 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess there's still a market for it, but clearly not. And I guess they were hoping to capture lightning in a bottle again by having Linda Hamilton back, but it didn't happen. And so the maybe less is more. I mean, when you think about Joker, where it's closing in on $1 billion versus this monstrosity CGI bloat that's Terminator Dark Fate or some of these other films. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know quality-wise, because a lot of people have been liking it, but I think the attraction quality, because there's been so many of these Terminator sequels that haven't been up to par, at this point, it's kind of just like the general public is like, we've seen it, we know it. Give us 5 chances to go and pay you money. The 6th chance, nope. I already know. Okay.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about it. Like I said, I haven't really felt compelled to go see any of the sequels or prequels or anything with this franchise because the first one, perfection to me. I do like the first one better than T2, even though I think most people like T2 better. Mm-hmm. But I don't really feel the need to go revisit this in the theater. I may catch it on Netflix or Amazon down the road, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it for a million times. Like, movies these days, tickets and event filmmaking, really, it's hard to do when you're competing with franchises like the Avengers.
Yeah.
And Marvel and that MCU property. DCU even has problems. I mean, some of us are kind of like, really? Batman v Superman did that much? Seriously?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you have these weird movies that come out like Venom. So who knows? I mean, and that's the other part that I like how you added it in here. Like, to also keep in mind, domestically it was bomb, but even globally, like, it's not even having a global appeal, which some of these lesser quality films and franchises can get away with producing more and more because their global intake is still strong, and 124 million globally, like, jeez.
Yeah, that's not good.
It's still really funny to yawn at numbers when you add on the word million to them.
Yeah. But that's the market. But you're right. Yeah, that's the marketplace we're in. And when you're competing against franchises like the Avengers and Star Wars and even Sony's Spider-Verse with Venom, where it did do very well internationally. Mm-hmm. And so it's a real crapshoot. But some things capture and some things don't.
Yeah, speaking of capturing, we finally got the announcement that we've all been waiting for since December of last year. Spider-Verse is getting a sequel, and of course, it's not going to be released until April 2022.
Yeah. I was so bummed when I heard that. I'm like, I want it now. I want it now because that film. I watched it again recently, and it's still just as amazing now, second or third viewing, than it is when I saw it in the theater.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't rewatched it, but it is still a gem of a movie that I think everyone at least should experience one time, if not more. And I'm so happy that despite arguably low box office numbers, it's still the quality there, the critic acclaim is there, and the need for it is there to push it to get a sequel that it deserves. That I hope, because of everybody talking about the first one, it gets a better opening and a better showing the second time around.
Yeah, it definitely was a sleeper hit. And word of mouth, and it showed when Oscar time rolled around, as far as the awards that it received. So it was definitely well received by the audience, and as you said, by the critics as well. And and looking forward to, and I guess the plus side of it not being until 2022, it really gives them a time to develop a good story and do the work they need to do to take it to the next level.
Yep. Speaking about sleeping, so Titans.
Yeah.
I no, Will, when I say Gar's log ... boring on the rundown, I literally fell asleep halfway through this episode because I was so bored.
Yeah.
It's funny that we finally get a chance to talk about Titans again. And it's an episode that, like, the last few I've liked. We've had our differences about them, but there was at least momentum. And then this episode happens, and Dick reveals the truth about Jericho's death to everyone else, and everyone's mad, so they all run away, and it's these isolated adventures. The coolest part was Starfire, of course, as always.
Of course.
But this whole other aspect of any time it went to the other characters, I'm like, I could care less. This is so weird.
Yeah. So I know we haven't talked about it here on the show. I know we've shared messages about the other episodes leading up to this one. I thought the Deathstroke episode last week in particular was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. This one, I feel like we are just spinning our wheels this week with Titans.
Thank you.
It had some moments. Definitely, as you said, anytime they need to just, if they're going to do a standalone episode, let's just do a standalone episode with Starfire and the story going on with her sister Blackfire, because that story just jumps off the screen every time they focus, and Starfire just period.
Right.
Anytime they show that character and spend some time with that character, she's very electric, and maybe they're saving this up for season 3, possibly.
Yep.
That's the only thing I can figure at this point. As far as Hank and Dawn, we left Wyoming for a reason.
Who remembered Ellis? No one remembered.
I didn't.
Ellis.
I was like Ellis.
It was so weird too, because they just get done doing an awesome rendition of that song, "Ain't No Mountain Too High," and then the next thing I know, they're confronted with their history in the town, and then they Hank abandons Dawn, and I'm like, but you just sang that karaoke song. How dare you?
Yeah. It was just bad. It was a bad transition narrative wise, because you left this town to get away, because of Dr. Light and what happened with Ellis and all the bad things that happened. And you go to, you return to Titan's Tower to get away from the pain in Wyoming, to go to the pain in Titan's Tower, and now you're going to go back to the pain in Wyoming, which doesn't make any sense at all.
It really doesn't. I mean, this whole and this is what really irritates me, Will, is that we saw the setup of the Garth episode where all of the Titans, by the end of it, are basically pushing Dick into this place of darkness and
Yep.
this need for revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And they all want it from themselves. I mean,
Yep.
What's her face? Wonder Girl.
Yeah.
That's the love of her life, who was just taken shot right away from her.
Yep.
And really, she's gonna push, like, tell Dick he was wrong for what he did. Do they remember? Like, it really, the accountability of the other Titans really irritated me. And I feel like the writers also just wrote them off because literally we see what is her name? What is Wonder Girl's name?
Donna Troy.
Donna. We see Donna and Raven get into a car, and then the next thing we know, Raven freaks out and then abandons Donna in the car, and then we never see them for the rest of the episode.
Exactly.
It was so weird.
That was so weird. And then we flash. We go return to Titan's Tower, and we get naked Connor again, and is standing there with Gar playing it, and and Gar's log. It was very, I know they were trying to just create a way to give Gar something to do, and I appreciate the effort. And there were some nice moments between Gar and Connor. I like the video games that they were playing, and whenever they were out of Titan's Tower, again, it was like, how we joked about the Flash, where it seems like they just always stayed in Star Labs and never went anywhere. So it was nice to see Gar actually walk in the streets of San Francisco and with Connor and showing him the world and everything, and getting to some of the things that they were talking about with Connor and his being created from Superman and Lex Luthor. And
but I think the problem is that Gar and Connor, they're add-ons at this point.
Yeah.
We create their comic relief and everything, but really after the previous episodes and really the introduction to this episode with the Jericho death cause reveal, why didn't we follow Jason?
We should, yeah.
Why didn't we follow Deathstroke's daughter?
Yeah,
like,
Jason, yeah.
Where it went would be more. It would be more. There would be more momentum because they're the ones who really have played pivotal parts into this current narrative of the new Titans. Gar, Connor had his moment. He had a freaking full episode. I love Connor. I think he's great. He is not critical to complete this story, and Gar was screwed over from the moment they paired him up with Raven.
Yeah. It's true. And that's I'm glad you brought up about Jason and Rose, because they really are the pivotal characters here, because obviously they are the focal point of the foil of the tension this season between Dick and Deathstroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
clearly Dick and Deathstroke also made out after dancing together too.
Yeah.
A lot of sexual tension there.
Yeah, lots of tension. So there was a lot of speaking of sexual tension, there was definitely that between Jason and Rose, which I know that was a few episodes back, but again, that was another reason why they should have focused on them, because yes, there was a spark there, and really seeing how Dick's treachery and also the rest of the Titans in seeking their revenge on Deathstroke for killing Garth, it really would have been given Dick's mea culpa that, hey, I own this, even though all of them share culpability. It would have been. I wish they had, and maybe they will in the next episode, because it's the way they do things with this show. They put the logical follow up 1 or 2 episodes later. How Jason and Rose reconcile that. Jason's on reconciliation with Dick, especially given how Bruce sent him there to learn under Dick, and Rose as far as just how she's going to fit in with this group of people who, basically used her brother to get to her father.
Right. Yeah, they have to, and maybe their whole. The writers are saving that for the next episode to really be the linchpin, maybe. But it irritates me, and we've all said this before, that this season is better than season 1 because it's not as disorienting as the first season because they did this bullshit a lot. And this is really one of the episodes this year where I'm like, whoa, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Where are we going, guys? I mean, like, come on. You had all this momentum, and then it drifted, and then there's this conversation between Deathstroke and Dick that makes the way I interpret stakes for this show to go way down with this whole need for forgiveness. And I hate when they do this. I hate it when there's a clear vendetta and there's a clear revenge mentality, and the bad guy suddenly is kind of like, I just want you to experience the same pain as I have, and it's just like,
yeah,
just kill him.
yeah. Well, there's interesting. Actually, it's funny. There's an interesting theory out there that Jericho actually, since he can project himself into others, actually projected himself into Slade.
I would buy that.
Yeah.
Because of how weird the end of that scene is, mm-hmm. and how calm the mom appeared to be.
Yeah. And when I saw that theory out there, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That does. It definitely narratively makes sense, and why that whole sequence went down the way that it did. And also, it definitely pushed Dick over the edge into that self-destructive tendency that he has. And, how the episode ended with him assaulting the police officers, I guess, to get Bruce to come bail him out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking about self-destructive qualities, I guess. I forget what you said. Side of people. Batwoman had an episode. And I don't know why this wasn't their Halloween episode. This episode was gross and creepy and weird.
Yeah, I guess it was their Halloween episode. But I know maybe it should have been scheduled in the reverse order. But I guess this is how, I guess the way the calendar fell. So.
Yeah, I mean, the narrative threads, we didn't know about Mouse until last week after a few conversations. So I was thinking about that too. It felt like if maybe they had made a few scheduling changes, they could pull it off, because this would be a really good Halloween episode for this genre.
Yeah.
And it was a different kind of episode because Kate was barely in the Batwoman outfit. It was just a lot of her and Alice quote unquote bonding as sisters, as we learned from Alice about the events following the crash. Mm-hmm. There was one really good editing choice and transition shot when they were back at the house and Kate is chained up, and they transition from Alice being chained up, mm-hmm. and Kate not being able to feel her in the room. And leaving to present day. And I thought, like, it's a rarity where I see those really cool and subtle changes. So I have to give them a shout out for that.
Yeah, that was a very. I've noticed that too, and I like the way they did that. And I guess it's showing how the show is maturing as it unfolds this first season. It's not perfect yet. No show ever is, especially first season. But considering where we were when we started with the pilot and where the show is now, I see the positive growth there. And one in particular, as I mentioned last week, and I'll say it again this week, it actually, I think Ruby is finally getting a good handle on Kate. A better handle on Kate. because she was out. Yeah, the bat costume basically just showed up in the cave,
Mm-hmm.
and it was truly an episode where all the actors really had to push the narrative forward in some very basic spaces, as far as in the old house, in the diner, and in a car, whatever. And so and also back at Wayne Towers. And so it was good from that standpoint, as far as just having the people really having to rely on selling the story, even though the dialogue is still very clunky in places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the girlfriend and the father, or ex-girlfriend, is her name Sophie?
I feel like yeah, Sophie. Yeah.
Sophie and the dad had some really bad dialogue.
Yeah.
Really bad. They had the worst dialogue in the whole episode, if you ask me. And there was one point where Sophie says something and is trying to act all tough and mean, and I'm just like, that sounds like it was recorded elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Yeah, that's definitely ADR going on right there. Yeah, but I guess one of the things when I was watching the episode, and of course you can't help but think about the other Arrowverse shows when you're watching this, and how really they're unfolding the whole backstory with Alice. Here we're just 5 episodes in, and wondering, I was wondering, I was going to ask you, how do you feel about, instead of this, how we've used to having the slow burn build up to the big reveal, we got the big reveal like right out the gate.
Yeah. So it's funny because when you first bring it up and say you can't help but compare it to the other ones, actually, it got me thinking. When I watch this show, I don't compare it. I compare Flash and Arrow all day, every day. For some reason, it's just ingrained in my mind to compare those. Supergirl has always been its own thing. Yeah. And sometimes I will compare when it reminds me of it, which isn't that often, especially this season because it's crap.
Yeah. I haven't watched this episode this week.
Yeah, neither have I. And I'm on the fence. I feel like our theory that every other season of Supergirl works might be true.
Yep.
So with Batwoman, I think I have not really compared it to the other shows, so I don't know if I can fully answer your question. I do think I appreciate that they're not doing flashbacks the same way. This isn't about really making us understand how Kate became who she was, because in a way, by learning how Alice became, we are learning where Kate comes from. So I think that's good and unique. It's also, Kate doesn't have powers, so it's not about this other event who created all of these meta-humans and now somebody has to save the day. Yeah. So it's just more about Gotham and understanding Gotham, which is a cool aspect of it that maybe they could delve into more. And I agree with you. It's kind of weird. It's like, for Arrow, it's classic. For both Arrow and Flash, it's classic to reveal the big twist with the villain mid-season finale.
Right.
But remember, we met Batwoman when she was already Batwoman.
Right.
So they may be utilizing this first half of the season to build up that character.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens during Crisis sets up a whole nother back end of the season.
Yeah, because where the story is now, and it was a little note in this episode this week, it's at Elseworlds, because if you recall, during the Elseworlds crossover, there was the Arkham Asylum
breakout,
and that's how Mouse is back with Alice, and that's getting us calendar wise up to where we first meet Kate as Batwoman.
Okay. Because as soon as they mentioned that, I was immediately thinking to myself, oh, so we must be there. And I wasn't sure, though. But I'm glad you've confirmed that because that makes a lot of sense. So, and like I said, you guys, maybe this is just a subtle way to kind of remind us that this is part of a larger universe. And right now, as we watch Arrow and Flash, we're constantly like, okay, Crisis is going to fix everything, or Crisis is going to really inform where we've been headed. With Batwoman, it's kind of like we're building this story thread. Crisis is going to happen, and then we're going to have a whole nother stretch of episodes to get through. So, so it's interesting, and I think the way they've set up the season is really because this is part of a larger universe, and and also is going to have this massive event happen right in the middle. So how do you really start a show knowing that that's going to impact your first season arc?
Right. Yeah, and how they, I mean, and time-wise, okay, if we're up to the arc and breakout, so they're going to have some kind of time jump to get us to, at least to in the Batwoman's world, to get them to Crisis, because Crisis in Batwoman right now it's not even thought. I mean, it's their focus on Alice and the things that are going on in Gotham. So they'll have to reconcile that, like you said, and then maybe that'll be the pivot point to another storyline and another villain for the second half of the season.
Yep. We always forget these seasons are long and exhausting, and there's so much more to tell. But I think they're on the right track, and I'm hopefully, like, the worst thing they could do is even after Crisis, it still all be about Alice. And I'm like, guys, come on, we've had 10 episodes. Let's wrap this up. We get it. They're sisters.
Right. This can't be a season-long arc. It's just if it is, they need to send Alice away and do some villain of the week stories, because I just don't feel that. Yeah, they've mined us pretty deeply, especially with the episode this week.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. They haven't fallen into that trap yet of villain of the week. I mean, you've had your villains, I guess.
Yeah.
But they've always managed to find itself back to it being about Alice or what Alice is up to. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, speaking about Arrowverse shows, we got confirmation this week that Emily Rickards will appear in the series finale, and all is right in the world. So, Paul Blackthorne will also appear. Well, duh, because Laurel is still on the show.
Yep.
So there's that. They're kind of related. And this is what every series does. It's always the final episode, homage to everything that came before. So, yeah, no surprise.
No surprise. Nope. It will just be, I guess, how will they integrate Quentin back in? Probably be some flashbacks or something like that, since he's pretty dead. He's 6 feet under. He's not coming back. But they'll do like they did with the season premiere. They'll probably find a way to, or even a second episode with Roy. Just figure out a way to make it work. Yep.
Sorry, we're dealing with the multiverse right now. So I think that being dead does not rule out a present day Quentin Lance. Just maybe not from this earth.
Yeah.
Just saying. Okay, and now to get into the meat of our podcast tonight, we are going to talk the third episode of Watchmen Season 1. Really good episode.
Yeah,
really liked this episode. I love how they keep doing it. It makes me think that they actually listen to our podcast or something, Will, because anytime we say, oh, they're going to do this, they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this episode does not start off with a history lesson.
Yeah, no, not at all.
No. But it's a really cool thing, because I love these kind of episodes where they bookend, and you see this woman go into a phone booth And then instantly you realize, okay, she's calling Dr. Manhattan just because of how it's designed and everything. And then she just starts telling these jokes. They're not funny,
No.
but they're intriguing. And I know, I mean, ever since last night, as expected, there are a million articles right now talking about what the jokes mean. I have not read any of those articles. Will probably has read them 5 times.
Maybe.
Maybe. But I did know, I was proud of myself that I figured out pretty quickly that this woman, Agent Blake, is a version, I believe, or a former version of Silk Spectre.
She's number 2.
Number 2.
Yep.
Related, and it's I want to say she's related to the comedian.
It's the comedian's daughter.
Yeah.
And so the comedian and Silk Spectre I
he raped
her, but then apparently, but they did eventually have a consensual affair.
Yeah.
So
movies back to me. Back to me.
Yeah. So
yeah. And then of course Silk Spectre had her relationship with Dr. Manhattan. Yep. And but it's and
also the Night Owls.
Yep, and also of course, and that's as soon as they introduced who, I was like, oh, I get it now. Yeah. That was the tipping point.
Yeah.
Because they did a really cool setup where you after the whole phone setup, they go into a bank, and at first you're like, whoa, this lady's a robber, and then it's turned on you where she's a part of a vigilante task force. Mm-hmm. So again, it's kind of like subverting our expectations because, well, if you're on a task force and you obviously have had bad experience with vigilantes, aka your father, who's a deadbeat, probably was one. So you have a lot of experience. Well, she's so much more complex than that. And I love her character, and I love everything that they did to build it up. Angela, I really love her character, but I like how we kind of took a pause on that narrative to introduce this foil. And it was a great episode.
It really was. I know it was a history lesson again, but in this episode, the opening was a history lesson about this universe, and I love the way, what an ingenious way to tie the comic book to this alternate, this new adaptation of the story, and because that was, we were wondering when we were going to get more people from it, and who do we get? But one of the original 4 that actually survives the squid, so dropping on the city. So. Yeah, I really liked the way they introduced her. I loved how they used her taking out the Shadow, the knockoff Batman, as a way to introduce her and the Vigilante Task Force into the mix of this story. How the interplay between her and Senator Keene, who was the original author of the Keene Acts, and the son of the senator who did the Keene Acts, who basically put her team out of business. I mean, it was illegal for her to be the hero of mass vigilante back in the day, and now she's the 100 vigilantes, and it opened up the whole story, like, who's the hero and who's the vigilante. I mean, it was just a great construct to really take the story forward that we've been dealing with in this season so far.
Well, I mean, what is the difference between a masked cop and a vigilante at this point? And the reality and the biggest joke of all is there isn't any. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a cop or a vigilante, you're still wearing a mask. You're still playing hero. And I guess it boils down to that badge, and that I am by law obligated to these restrictions. It's my job, and so there's accountability there. When a vigilante goes, it's different, because it's them taking the law into their own hands. So there's a lot of, but I love that, because as we talk about this show, we mentioned in the first episode about there being like a cool premise when you have the cavalry clearly wearing masks themselves, facing off against cops who are masked, and so it blurs that line. And I think it just hit the nail on the hammer in this episode with everything that unfolded, especially as it all drew from this very complex and three-dimensional character.
Definitely. And also the other thing about the hero villain thing is, Rorschach was basically, whenever in the original Watchmen, he was seen as a hero because he was trying to prevent a nuclear war. Here in this new world, and his mask is taken up by the bad guys, the white supremacists, as their mask to try to subvert the red predations and their guns being taken and everything else. So I mean, what I really like about the show is it is very complex, and it does make you think and not take everything at face value whenever you're presented with these characters.
Right, especially if you are locked in the pod, which it has been confirmed is basically a racist detector.
Yeah.
I appreciate the explanation. And that's another thing that this show does. The way they incorporate exposition. It's not lazy. It's not, it feels very natural. It doesn't make me feel like, oh, okay, I can skip this part because I've been watching the whole season. So it just feels like natural conversation. And for purposes of the character we're following or the events at hand, we actually need to explain what the pod is and boil it down to essentially it's a racist detector. So I really like that. I mean, that's smart writing. Forget the whole setup with the jokes and everything, but just making sure you're able to explain what is happening, but in a creative way that seems effortless and not just like throwing exposition at you and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. That's everything.
That is, and how that the Looking Glass is the interrogator, and how the pod is the interrogation chamber, and then having Lori basically the roles be flipped, where she's now interrogating Ward, and not to try to ferret out who the racist is, but who's let's find out more about Angela and what her role is as far as the police force.
Right. And that's really where they left it, which brings me to one of my favorite shots, not scenes, but shots of the episode, is when they're in that cemetery area and Angela has finished trying to figure out the hole that was dug to allow the cavalryman to attempt to blow up the funeral service. Mm-hmm. And they're talking and discussing things, and Angela pours out the coffee and then leaves, and then the shot is of her goggles, and we still see Agent Blank in the frame, but it's through the lens of the goggle.
Yeah.
And that just was so cool. Like, these are the kind of shots that Mr. Robot season 1 had that like blew my mind and have been missing for like the past season and a half. And this show just keeps on incorporating like that. It's that little thing. Like, of course, we get it. Like, she's mad, and they both had a revelation about each other, and clearly they're foils and everything. So, and Angela exits. That's it. That's all you have to show. But instead, the way they framed Agent Blake was so interesting, and just an image you're not used to.
Yeah.
That does look like it's pulled from the comic books. I could not get over that shot.
Yeah, I thought about you actually when I saw that. I'm glad you pretty much confirmed what I was thinking, that you were going to love that particular shot.
Okay, I will try to be more original.
No. It's not an original. No. It's just, I see. When I watch shows, sometimes I will watch them through the lens of Sarah, because you pick out things that sometimes I don't think of. So, and that was one of those moments, because it was so expertly shot and just presented that it was so much. There were so many things spoken in that one frame, in that scene, that it really does open up to so many things that were probably going through Laurie's mind, and also Angela's as she was walking out. And especially when you think of when they were having their discussion about Judd and what they found in the closet, or didn't find in the closet, and
the metaphor, all of that was just so cool. Yeah. I that scene was there. It's funny because I feel like I should be saying more, but I almost don't want to, because I just want people to watch this episode. Okay, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But this episode, if you're into filmmaking, if you're into TV making or production and writing of genre shows, this is a masterclass in it.
It is. I completely 100% agree with you. And also, this is just a really well done series. Just every week, it has not failed to deliver, in my opinion.
Yeah. I will admit, I skipped over the 15-minute segment in England. With I just can't. I don't. Yeah. I scroll ahead and okay, skip next scene. I don't, and it's also not doing itself any favors when we were just talking about this in relation to Titans. When you have momentum with some of the characters, to then go off of this, go and tackle this C storyline that probably is important, that maybe is setting up a greater scream. It feels like a distraction and not a part of it. They're doing I think that as much as I love this episode, and I do think it's outstanding and it should be analyzed further, I think the one thing I would cut from it would be anything to do with England.
Yeah.
And that's because I'm an American. No.
True. I was distracted by it. The whole Vate story, I know it's interconnected. I know at some point they're going to pull this and Dr. Manhattan together, but part of it is okay, is this happening contemporaneous to the other things that are going on? Is it another flashback, or just its own little world where he is just basically telling a story for his own amusement?
Right. Like that's it too. It is so removed.
Yeah.
That and they have yet to make a single thread single connection. I mean, there are some name drops. Maybe if I actually watch the scene, maybe I would pick up on those.
Yeah.
and allusions to the characters who we know as the Watchmen, but it's still in comparison, like, and it just blows my mind that they're having such a hard time incorporating that arc when we didn't know about Blake before this episode, and then she comes in and it's just like, bam, we're gonna set this up. And I actually feel as if by the end of this episode, not only do I understand Blake, but I understand Angela so much more better. And she, just when you think she can't get more complex, I feel like they just added the cherry on top. And that's why that final scene between the two of them was so just give me more.
Yeah.
At the end of it, is because this is what a foil does. It is supposed to not only present a different perspective, but also really balance out like the complexity of your main character. Yeah,
definitely. Yep, you're right. Yeah, and I mean, the only thing I can say in response to the Vate story, especially given his, I guess, grand reveal, if you want to call it. I mean, we all knew who he was, or at least who he thinks he is, Asmodeus. But I guess the common thread, the thing that's threading it all together so far, is just the connection to Dr. Manhattan. And again, maybe we'll, they only have 9. It's not like other series where they have many episodes. We only have 9, so. So they're gonna, whatever the connection is, I feel we will probably get it the next episode or 2.
Well, I just keep on seeing this episode. Honestly, I thought we were gonna get it, and then they were gonna cut, because the scene I remember from the trailer is him walking down what appears to be that same street where that phone booth was located, that she was calling from. And he stops and picks up a flyer, and you see the blue hand. So I was ready for it. I was like, she is spending a long time telling these jokes.
Yeah. Well,
But see, and it's interesting because we had so much fun talking about William and Angela last week, that then to see this week, you would think that we'd be like, oh, this was distracting because Blake's suddenly here and it's just about her. But not only that revelation with Angela, but also William, when the very car, I can only assume, could have been dropped right on her, but intentionally missed her, and it was right there, and it's like, all same universe, same story thread. Yeah, and we're lost for words because we're just saying like, yep.
But it's that's just how well it's done, and I'm just like, oh, they bring it back, and Will's not there. And it's just connected to Dr. One of the threads that run through this show is, do the gods even care? I mean, because
sorry, that was weird.
Yeah.
But no, I like that point. Do the gods even care?
So that's all I have to say. I'm gonna leave it there.
I think our listeners should tweet you if they think that the gods do care. And why don't you tell our listeners where they can send those tweets to Will?
Yeah, you can send them to my Twitter account at Will M Polk. That's WILLMPOLK. And also, I'll be at North Carolina Comic Con this weekend, so you can just tell me face to face.
Yeah, please do. Please stalk him. You can find me at Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.